Hello, fellow historians. Today, we're going to talk about the First Amendment. First episode, First Amendment. We have a pretty big problem in this nation running along the lines of free speech and what it entails, and both sides trying to shut the other down politically. The right doesn't really want to listen to the left, and the left definitively does not want to listen to the people on the right. At various points, this is flipped and flopped. It's not a political statement on one being correct and the other one not. The right side's been jerks on various occasions. The left side, equally so. Disingenuous statements from each side. But, in my opinion, we are now far more polarized than we were as a republic at the beginning of the Civil War. The only difference is we are no longer geographically separated as the Civil War was, and in fact live neighbor to neighbor with this polarization. It's getting bad. It's getting to the point where individuals that are more moderate on each side are afraid to make any statements whatsoever. So, what does the First Amendment truly protect? What does it truly cover? It's a little surprising for most people. The First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, due to the Supremacy Clause, this applies downward. So the states are required to basically follow the amendment as if it was their own. And I believe the state of Texas has an amendment in our Constitution that just basically mirrors the First Amendment. But even if it did not, the state has to abide by it, as do local governments. Basically, any governmental body found in the United States, from federal to local jurisdictions, has to abide by not just the First Amendment, but all of the amendments. So that's step one. But it does not protect you from other people. If you're banned from a social media platform because you said something that the platform found disagreeable, that's not a First Amendment issue. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of those types of social media platforms are privately owned, and they are not required to allow you to say your fill. They can do whatever it is they so please. It's a business model. If they want to listen to an echo chamber, they can make it so they listen to an echo chamber. What else may be in this? Oh, yeah, your job. Again, private company, and it's not a First Amendment kind of thing. If the NFL had decided to fire all of those football players who kneeled because, bottom line is, it hurt the NFL's dollars, they would have been well, let me rephrase, because the NFL doesn't hire the players. Any of those teams that chose to fire or release players for those issues, they're not protected under the First Amendment. A football team is a private industry, private organization. And if you say something on the clock, and communication through means other than verbal, i.e. your nonverbal communication, kneeling, those are all fine and dandy, but it's not a First Amendment protected issue. You do something on the clock that is against company policy, or that costs the company money, and they can you. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this PG. But if you are released for cause, that's perfectly fine. You have no redress. Sorry. What else could we have in here? Now, government employees. I am a government employee under one of these listed here, and I have to be extremely careful about what and how I say things. Now, I'm interpreting the First Amendment for this video, and that's all fine and dandy. I'm generally not going to be harassed over it, but um, if I say something in a certain manner, if I post a video with a certain bias to it, which I intend to never do, I try to step back from my personal biases to the greatest degree possible, it can make things dicey for me. They can't fire me on, because of reasons that deal with freedom of speech, but I can be let go for reasons of interference with my ability to do my job. How about that? Anybody that sees it, anyone that I deal with, could then be seen to have a bias against me or a loss of faith or confidence. So while technically I should be protected in my job under the First Amendment, even then, it's not a sure thing, and I have to watch what I say. Universities or public groups that cancel a speech, if it's a private institution. Let's see. I know Rice University in Houston is a purely private school. Notre Dame, I believe, is a purely private school. Those kinds of things, those kinds of universities, they don't necessarily receive government dollars. It's a very complicated issue, but let's just say they make all their money from their students. They can do that. If a public institution does it, university, or what is it, USC, University of Southern California, University of Texas, Austin, any of these other various institutions that are publicly funded through their states, they have to be a lot more careful about it, because they do have to adhere to freedom of speech. And by the way, this is CNN, so I recognize that they fall far on the left, and really, given the way things are right now in the social justice warriors, which we'll get to in a minute, I thought it appropriate to pull up CNN just to make sure that no one could fall back on the argument that, oh, that's just conservative thinking. Now, if you're arrested, if the government tries to punish you for saying something just for the speech, then yeah, that's a first, that they can't do that. That is the point of the First Amendment. If you say something that upsets the government, well, that's too bad. Nobody cares. And that's the way it should be. The government, in fact, the First Amendment comes out of the Revolutionary War because the British caused a lot of stink over words. The government cannot tell you that you're not allowed to say something. The government can't come in, and if you're a person that thinks the world is flat, idiot, the government really can't come in and go, you're too stupid to be free. We're going to put you in a jail. That's perfectly reasonable, but not for the government to do, because if you think the earth is flat, you're an idiot. Sorry. I mean, that's just, well, no, I'm not sorry. Not sorry at all. You know what? You guys piss me off. You guys that think the world is flat, just, you should go apologize to the nearest tree for wasting the oxygen that it worked really hard to produce for you. Again, another non-First Amendment issue. If your comment or post or whatever is deleted, and oh, they go right into the NFL issue here. And they have a different interpretation than I do. Yes, okay. I agree with their statement. Symbolic speech is protected by the Constitution. In essence, you have the right to not speak. You have the right to silence. But it's not on your own time. Symbolic speech being protected by the Constitution implies that you are not working. You are not actively making money. And even though the NFL or the teams pay by contract, which is then broken down to pay by game, you're affecting their business on the clock. That's one of the reasons I think the NFL highlighted the idea that you can stay in the locker room. That's fine. I mean, you're not actively doing anything while you're on the clock. You're sitting in the locker room. I'm not sure about fining. I'm not sure about the fine part of it. This may be completely legitimate as far as fining an individual for this kind of conduct on the clock. I've never worked in an industry that you fine the employees. So, yeah, that may be hazy, but you could definitely be terminated for it. Contract not renewed, whatever. Any business does not have to employ you. That's just a cardinal rule. They don't have to give you a job. Arrested while recording police activities, definitely a First Amendment issue. Not usually, definitely is. The only way this doesn't become isn't a First Amendment issue is if you follow police into a secured area. But even then, you're not being detained or arrested for the actual filming. You're being detained or arrested for going into a secured area. If police officers are in the public, then they are trained and they are aware, whether they like to admit it or not, that they have no expectation of privacy. In fact, I can guarantee you they know that because officers know that any evidence that they can see is, even through a window, any evidence that is visible, the individual who owns that evidence has no legal expectation of privacy, i.e. police officers can go through your garbage without a warrant because it's placed out of your control on the curb, and there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. If you go out into public wearing things that are less than modest, then you have no expectation of privacy, and you cannot, get angry at the cops for arresting you because you didn't say anything or weren't doing anything. Again, public university. So basically, it is strictly a governmental issue. We'll move off of this, and there's social justice warriors are a little angry in which college was this? Chicago, I think, of all places, Chicago, supporting free speech and opposing trigger warnings. I'm not sure Chicago should ever utter the word trigger for any reason whatsoever, given their murder rate. But I digress. Social justice warriors. Their their main arguments. They don't want to be triggered. They object to the no trigger warnings because they don't want to get triggered. They want a heads up. They object because they don't get their safe spaces. Listen up, guys. This is the United States of America. You have no guarantee, no right, no legal anything against hearing something that hurts your feelings. Get over it. This nation was not formed with a bunch of heartfelt, emotional, safe places. It doesn't frickin' happen. Nobody cares. You can say stuff, and you guys do say stuff all the time that pisses off the people on the right. But when people on the right want to say things that you find hurtful, you want to cry and moan and whine and play the victim. Tired of it. And I know, bald head, little gray in the beard, I'm old, right? There's a lot of us that are old. But those of us that were old, we had a little saying. Sticks and stones may break our bones, but words will never hurt us. Now, when I was a kid, I thought that was a trite and stupid expression because obviously what somebody says doesn't really frickin' hurt you. It doesn't do anything to you. You learn to ignore it. You learn to counter it, but you don't curl up in a ball and go cry. People have different opinions. Historians know this well because we all have different opinions and interpretations of facts. They reject the idea that colleges should be a place where ideas are freely exchanged because not all ideas are equal and some are too offensive to have a place in the community. Well, who gets to make that decision? Who makes that interpretation? There are no ideas that are too offensive for discussion. There are ideas that are too offensive to be implemented, but no idea is too offensive to be discussed, to have a rational conversation about. When you do this, then you have people that keep their opinions to themselves, and they stew, and they stew, and then eventually they act. And almost to a man and a woman, the consequences are, I had no idea that he was planning that, or that she was planning that. I had no idea that they were capable of that, because they were afraid to discuss things. They were afraid to talk. We must all be more sensitive. Other people will be harmed psychologically. Everybody's harmed psychologically. We're creatures of both our genetics and our environment. Who we are and what we are is formed from our psychological harm. I am the person I am because of the events in my life, as are each and every one of you. So the point, ladies and gentlemen, is essentially this. The First Amendment protects you from the government. It protects the press from the government. It prevents the government from detailing what religion you may be. It does not care about you personally beyond that scope. And it certainly does not protect you from those around you or hearing things that you dislike. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like it, that's okay. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. If you want to help me out, or you have particular questions or events that you would like to see covered, please let me know either through the comments or at oneangryhistorian@gmail.com. I appreciate you watching the video. Have a good day.